huge thank you to everyone who's been associated with preparing for and then enduring and then recovering from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. Some really quite remarkable acts of selflessness from our first responders, our SES, our Energex and Ergon workers right throughout southeast Queensland and into northern New South Wales, where Jenny's from as well. So a big thank you to all of them. Today we are extending the allowance and the payment. This will be a bit of extra help for the people who are hardest hit. And we have been primarily focused throughout on the human cost of these natural disasters, but there will be a very substantial economic cost as well. And recovering and rebuilding from natural disasters will be a key influence on the budget that Katie Gallagher and I will hand down in 8 days' time. Remember, around 5 million Australians were in harm's way when it comes to Cyclone Alfred. Around 2 million homes. At one point, there were more than 450,000 homes without power. In our part of the world, that's actually the most ever simultaneously. And there was something like 12 million work hours lost when businesses closed down. So we're getting a handle on the economic costs, and we're getting a handle on the costs to the budget, and we will report our initial assessment of that in the budget Tuesday next week. Treasury expects there will be about a $1.2 billion hit to economic output just as a consequence of XTC Alfred. That's about 1/4 percentage point in GDP. And we also anticipate that there will be some impact on fruit and vegetable costs, depending on how much of the farmland has been impacted, but also when it comes to building and construction costs. We've made a heap of progress on building and construction in the inflation numbers, but depending on how much rebuilding will be necessary, we can anticipate some upward pressure on building costs as a consequence. There will also be costs to the budget, and those costs will be substantial. We will provision an extra $1.2 billion in next week's budget in new funding for payments and also to help rebuild local communities as well. Now, that new $1.2 billion will be part of $13.5 billion total in the budget to respond to and rebuild after natural disasters. Now, I wanted to remind you that when our political opponents talk about wasteful spending, included in the number they use is funding for natural disaster recovery. None of this funding is safe if the coalition wins the election, and that's because they think this spending is wasteful. Now, I'm told that the Shadow Treasurer is off on a little tour. I think that's a very good thing. From our point of view, the more Angus, the better in the coming months. Now, he should visit every single marginal seat and tell millions of Australians that he tried to deny them a tax cut. He should visit every marginal seat and tell millions of Australians that he tried to deny them the cost of living help that they need and deserve. If Angus Taylor had his way, wages would be lower, millions of workers wouldn't be getting a tax cut at all, and they wouldn't be cost of living help. And that means Australians would be thousands of dollars worse off if Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor had had their way. Now, more Australians are now earning more as a consequence of our efforts as a Labor government on wages, and they're keeping more of what they earn as well because of our tax cuts. Now, all of that is at risk if Peter Dutton wins the election. Now, one of the most helpful things, one of the many helpful things that Angus Taylor has said in the last little while is last week when he said the best predictor of future performance is past performance. Now, that should send a shiver up the spine of every single Australian under pressure, because that reminds us about the Coalition's attacks on Medicare when they were last in office, the fact they tried to keep wages low, the fact they voted against cost of living help, the fact that inflation was higher and rising when they were in office, real wages were falling and living standards were falling fast. No wonder they won't come clean on any policies at all. They have no idea what they're doing, and they won't say what they will cut. And no wonder then that so many of Angus Taylor's colleagues are lining up to bag him in the paper. So this would be the worst possible time to risk the progress that Australians are making together in our economy. Our economy has turned a corner. We are making progress together. A change of government represents a very serious risk to that progress because our political opponents didn't want Australians getting tax cuts, didn't want them getting cost of living help, and last time in their office they went after Medicare and wages.